Welcome to the Nerdist Podcast number 916. This episode brought to you by Loot Crate. Be the envy of your friends and get your 100% exclusive crates at lootcrate.com/Nerdist. Go ahead and enter the offer code Nerdist. Save 10% off any new subscription. November's Loot Crate theme is Unite 2.0. So that means they've joined forces with Justice League, Voltron, Overwatch, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers for a crate full of incredible items. And also, all subscribers are going to get a free download for the first season of Batman the Telltale series as this month's DLC, a $25 game on Steam. And then one lucky subscriber will win a mega crate of epic proportions. You have until the 19th at 9 p.m. Pacific to subscribe and receive that month's crate. And when the cutoff happens, that's it. That's over. So you still got 10 days as the posting of this podcast to get in November's crate, which is Unite 2.0. I mean, surprise yourself. Surprise a loved one. When I say surprise yourself, I mean, you'll forget that you ordered it, and then things will come, and you'll be like, oh my gosh. It's very difficult to surprise yourself. But if you can do that, I say surprise yourself. But if you want to get fancy, a bigger box with bigger loot is available called Loot Crate DX. These are monthly wearables, accessories with cult classics, favorite franchises. And if you're more of a fashion person, try Loot Wear. So there's a lot of loot stuff in the loot verse. So check it out, lootcrate.com/Nerdist. Enter the offer code Nerdist to save 10% off any new subscription today. Let's go to the Nerdist Community Corkboard from Nerdist folks just like yourself. Derek Dwyer writes, I was hoping I could add my free comic book to the Community Corkboard. Done. It's because of Chris Pete and more over at Nerdist that I decided not to wait for somebody to ask me to write and draw a comic book, so I just decided to do it myself. Damn right. It's a free 24-page full-color comic book, story and art by me, at Dwyer_Derek, D-E-R-E-K. It's an action sci-fi drama comic set around the crashing of an alien spaceship. You got monsters, swords, and Buddy the dog. It's called On My Shoulders. It can be found on Twitter, Instagram, Tumblr, DeviantArt, Facebook. Search On My Shoulders comic book, facebook.com/On My Shoulders comic book. Probably the best place to read it, though, is on Facebook, he's saying. So thanks so much for the years of free podcasts. You're welcome. And it makes the days of being a greenkeeper in Ireland fly by. Oh my gosh, a greenkeeper in Ireland. I'm going to come visit you. Gotta come to Ireland. User Flamingo Fast on Reddit writes, my 10-year-old son is raising money for an educational field trip to the East Coast. He's doing so by selling Lego jewelry on Etsy. Amazing. Everything he sells, he has designed and created himself. He'll be adding to his inventory between homework and robotics responsibilities. Thank you so much. So if you just go to etsy.com/EDUDC trip fundraiser, I'm on there now. These are adorable. These are adorable, like Lego necklaces and earrings, and come on, you gotta help this delightful kid have an educational trip. All right, well done. This episode is Jon Bernthal, and he is promoting The Punisher, which is on Netflix soon, and his upcoming film Sweet Virginia in theaters on November 17th. I never really talked to Jon that much. Our paths just didn't cross because when he was leaving Walking Dead, I was just coming in, and so we only kind of knew each other peripherally. But what a great fucking guy! Oh my god. Very sweet, very thoughtful, really cool. I was really, really, really happy to have him on, and we talked about a lot of stuff. You're gonna love Bernthal. You are gonna fucking love Bernthal. So thanks to Jon for coming on the podcast, and also this podcast was brought to you by Stamps.com. Going to the post office sucks. Oh my God, especially now. It's November. There's already Christmas decorations up, which means Christmas stuff is in full effect, and it's not even Thanksgiving yet. But avoid the hassle of the post office. Mail everything from postcards to envelopes to packages, domestic or international, with Stamps.com. You can buy and print official U.S. postage for any letter, any package, any class of mail using your own computer and printer. You click print mail, and then you're done. And it never closes. All right, 24/7. So you can enjoy Stamps.com with a special offer that includes a 4-week trial plus postage in a digital scale without long-term commitments. Go to Stamps.com, click the microphone at the top of the homepage, and type in Nerdist. That's Stamps.com, enter the promo code Nerdist. Stamps.com. Never go to the post office again. And now, Katie Levine, and episode 916 of the Nerdist podcast, presenting Mr. Jon Bernthal. Katie, roll the thing.
Now entering Nerdist.com.
So blown away when I ran into you at Comic-Con and you go, "Hey, I listen to the podcast." I was like, "What?" I had no idea. I mean, because you were going out as I was coming in, basically, and still people go, "I wonder how Shane would do with Rick." I mean, I'm sure people ask you all the time, but you couldn't have had any concept that Walking Dead was going to have this kind of indelible mark.
No, man. I mean, I think, the wonderful world of Walking Dead, I feel like, when the show came about, its roots were so humble, I mean, it was so humble, and I feel none of us had any idea. That being said, there was this I don't want to be cheesy, but like this burning desire to be a part of it. I mean, at that point in my life, I was going through all kinds of crazy stuff, and I was being sued. I had, I was having sort of financial difficulties, and it was the first time, I think I had this offer to be on one of these sort of big procedural, crime shows that had a syndication deal, which would have been like, your money problems are over. And I remember I had this audition for Walking Dead. I just read the script, and I just, to sort of the shock of my family and all the people around me, I just sort of said, until I can throw my hat in the ring for this, I can't take anything. And at that point in my career, I would have taken freaking anything.
Holy
what I mean? And I just loved this script so much. And it was just one of those perfect jobs that, as you got closer and closer to it, once I met Frank Darabont, and once Andy was cast, and even the audition process was so humane and lovely, oddly, which, they never are. And it just is one of those jobs that got better and better and better. And then just had this added bonus of, people liked it. But we had no idea, man. I remember Sarah Wayne Callies telling me, if 1 million viewers watch this show, we're going to be all right. We're going to get a second season. You know what I mean? And I was doing this movie at the time. I'd just been married, and I did this movie at the time with Woody Harrelson. And I remember lunch just ended, and Woody Harrelson came back, and I guess he had read the trades or, read something online. He's like, 5 million people watch your show, dude. I was like, what the fuck? That's a lot more than 1 million.
That's insane. And that was insane on cable specifically at that time. Yeah. Like now everything is blown up so much, but that was not common back then, even just 6 short years ago, 7 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, it was, and it wasn't a huge vote of confidence, picking you up for 6 episodes is not like, hey man, this is gonna kill. And you got to remember, AMC at the time, that was, it was like Mad Men and Breaking Bad. It was super prestige television, and we kind of felt like the assholes who were making the zombie show. But I remember, Frank and all of us sort of got together, and our goal was to to make something that the Mad Men and the Breaking Bad audience would dig, and would be sort of, transcend the genre a little bit. But I remember, with you, I remember you coming on, and it was sort of right. I remember you moderated a panel at Comic-Con in San Diego, and it was right sort of at the time right after that, with Frank's exit and all that, and it was just sort of like, this show was just sort of growing and growing and growing, and I can't, what it's become. It's just it's a phenomenon. I mean, I always say to people, never underestimate the power of that show. It just sort of grows and grows.
Yeah, but it's what an interesting thing in your gut, because the procedural is sort of the blessing and the curse of television, I think, because I think people go, oh my God, like you said, I'll never have to do anything again. I'm set for life. And then I think maybe 2 or 3 seasons and people start to go, oh, so this is the thing I get. And certainly nothing against anyone who takes those jobs, but I think, if you want to be able to do a lot of things, I think that type of very, very long-term procedural path doesn't really allow you to do much
That's
else.
it, man. And I knew for me that wasn't for me. And luckily, the people that represent me, I think that they knew that too. And that's a hard thing, I mean, it's a hard thing, for someone who's getting 10% of your shit, to be like, hey man, don't go that way. Do this one. That's throw your hat in the ring for this one. But I'm super grateful that I did it, and I think that throughout that process, which was so insane, that audition process for Walking Dead. But I feel like and then having it sort of go the way that it did. I don't want to be cheesy, but I'm just so enormously grateful for that show. I'm so enormously grateful for my time on that show, for the friendships that I've made on that show. And I'm so grateful to have moved on from it and to have gotten this unbelievable opportunity to play a character with a real beginning, middle, and end, and these sort of buoys that were set in place along his journey, but that's a real thing. And to sort of know going in, hey, you're not going to last, and to know you're going to go from X to Z, and it's an unbelievable opportunity as an actor, and I feel like I owe Frank, and I owe that show and that cast, Andy Lincoln, I owe them so much. I'm always going to be indebted to them, and they'll always be among my greatest friends, sort of in the business.
Well, not to Talking Dead you, but because you never were able to come on the show, it didn't really exist much when you were on the show,
yeah.
But it's just, and we'll just talk about this for a quick second, but
sure,
but it's interesting to see where Rick has gone, and where Shane said you can't survive in this world. I can survive in this world, and now Rick has gone through so many different psychotic iterations.
Sure.
I mean, do you think if Shane were still alive, do you think he would have done anything differently, or do you think he would be kind of proud of what Rick has done?
Look, man, I'm not going to bullshit you. I got 3 little babies, and I'm like, they got lots of diapers to buy, so I work like crazy. So I haven't been able to completely keep up, But that being said, I think that, for me, what Shane always was I felt, and I felt it in a palpable way while we were making the show. I felt he was the first guy to sort of figure out the rules or lack thereof of this new world. And right. I think it all started, again, not to Talking Dead you, but like I think it all started with that that character Ed, who's beating his wife Carol, played by Melissa McBride, the biggest gangster ever. That day that he's sort of just been told by Lori to leave her alone, and then he saw him beating his wife, and he went over and he broke it up as he would have in the old world, but then he hit him, and then he hit him again, and then he hit him again. And I remember Frank writing, he needed to find something there in the beating of this guy, and just to beat him and realize in that beating, hey, there's no rules out here. I could actually just keep beating this guy as long as there's no police, there's
right.
nobody who's going to come to get me. And then I think a couple episodes later, he sees Rick walking in the woods, and he's got that gun trained. They're
right.
looking for something, and then he just all of a sudden and he says, you know what? Like, actually, in this world, I can do what I want. Like, right. I could just handle this now. And just these seeds are being planted. And I think, then everything sort of got put into overdrive with Shane. And I think he really figured out what this new world was. And it was going to dawn on everyone. I think that's why he had all that sort of like beautiful frustration that he had with Rick and the choices that he was making, because he really saw the new world, and you could not apply old world rules to this new world. And so I think he was ahead of his time that way. So I think it's only logical that Rick would sort of come to this sort of same place.
Well, and I had this really terrible joke when everything was going down with that, because then Shane hooks up with Andrea in the car, and then there was a question about, well, whose baby is Lori? Is it Rick's baby? Is it Shane's baby? And I said, all right, if it comes out of Lori and goes into Andrea, it's Shane's. Everyone's like, come on. But the idea that that Rick essentially accepted, like, all right, biologically this may not be my baby, but I accept it. I accept this world. So I feel like Shane really did, intentionally or unintentionally pass on some spiritual DNA to Rick. And I guess Rick, we have said many times, like, oh, Rick is embracing the Shane now. He's really it took him longer to realize the more you cling on to the old worlds, the less able you will be to survive in this new world. But if you hadn't died on the show,
then you wouldn't have gotten to be the Punisher. And you were so fucking good
thanks,
on
man.
that season of Daredevil.
shit.
And my wife and I are both like, I can't wait to see this guy in his own story. But I mean, I cannot imagine anyone else in that role. Did they offer that to you, or did you audition for it? Were you aware of it? How did it come around?
They had we had talked. I was doing a movie in Ireland. And I was playing a mute in the movie, and right, no lines to memorize.
For that?
You don't, man. That one they gotta just give you. You know what I mean? But yeah, I would hate to see the fucking audition. Marceau bullshit.
Stand over there. All right, now walk over here.
Done. Yeah.
I mean, we're gonna go another direction.
Up off book.
I fucked that up.
You know what I mean? Like, what the fuck? But I mean, I remember, me being sort of the asshole I was. I figured that the only way I was the only American in the movie. It was Tom Holland and Stanley Weber and Richard Armitage, and it was great, beautiful script and cool story. But I sort of went into it saying the only way I'm going to be able to do this sort of accurately or authentically or I had to stop talking. And so I just stopped talking on set, off set. We were all living together in this little place in Western Ireland. So, we were all staying under the same roof, having all our meals together. So after work, I'd be silent all day at work. And then we'd all be sitting around the same table. And here comes like the asshole American who thinks he's fucking Daniel Day-Lewis. You know what I mean? Who's like not talking. You know what I mean? I'm like writing notes like, hey man, can you order me the salmon? You know what I mean? Like, and it was just, it was so exhausting for everyone. But I remember, about a few weeks into it, I finally realized that part of the process was being detrimental. It was helpful to me, but I feel like overall it was becoming detrimental. When you don't have any lines and you're a lead character in the movie, if you're not communicating with your director, I have to develop my own language, right? So my language was through gestures and through looks and through reactions, but he's covering the line. So if he doesn't know what I'm doing, and I because of my fucking acting exercise, I'm not telling him, just shit was getting missed. You know what I mean? And anyhow, so I start to and the whole cast down to a T agreed that they liked me better silent than when I was talking. But anyway, that during this whole time is sort of when the Punisher thing kind of came about, and I wasn't really communicating with back home, both because there's no internet where we were, and it was just tough. So it was sort of weird. It was kind of through this like archaic kind of like through the cable, we were sort of going back and forth. Hey, they're interested in you in Punisher. So we made. I knew that there was interest. I think they had seen Fury, and my agent represents Charlie Cox, so I think that they sort of had there's a little bit of inside baseball there, knowing that it was going on, and and we made a tape, man. I remember they wanted to see a tape, and the audition tape was a dude who was taking his, I think was hunting with a young guy, and the young guy was afraid to shoot the deer, and he had to like talk him through it. It was like fake audition scene. So Tom Holland and I went and, I had been working with him on his Spider-Man audition tapes. And
that's
so this
so
one
fucking
came about,
great.
right? So Tom and Holland, we'd been in Ireland, like the middle of nowhere forever. And then we went to Liège, Brussels to shoot the last bit. And Liège was like it was like the biggest metropolis in the world compared to where we were in Ireland. So we were like feeling ourselves, like going out and eating French fries and shit. And, we were in this park and we shot this scene, and then this actor Stanley Weber played the deer. He was like going in the background, like munching on grass like an asshole. Yeah, it was so fucked up. So,
oh my God, that tape's got to be around somewhere.
Oh man, it's so fucked up, man. So, but like that was a tape. So Tom and I made this tape, and that was sort of it. And I hadn't seen the show, but I'd seen once I knew there was the interest, and we started talking about it. I watched, and I remember Charlie's first monologue in the first episode of Daredevil. And the sort of the kind of work he was doing, and the attention and the time they let him have to deliver that monologue. And then I saw D'Onofrio, and I said, okay, shit, man, I want in on this. Like they're really letting people explore and go for it and be bold, and they're turning their back on the audience, and it was exactly the kind of TV work I wanted to do.
I think it's really nice for fans to hear that you helped. There's so much Marvel simpatico going on. Like you helped Spider-Man become Spider-Man, and Spider-Man helped the Punisher become the Punisher. That's really sweet because Tom's seems like a super sweet, super guy.
Tom's the greatest, man, and you know, I saw him sort of go through that. I mean, his process was a lot longer than mine. And, you know, he was going in through audition after audition. And you know, we were making tapes in Ireland. I've really never seen, you know, I come from sports and I do think there's a lot of similarities between, you know, what we do in athletics. And I always try to take sort of an athletic approach to the work. You know, in anything, boxing, football, baseball, anything I've done before, surely, you know, acting, I've never seen someone with so much drive and so much discipline and so much belief as Tom Holland. And he wanted this to happen and he made it fucking happen. And he did it with grace and with kindness and with work ethic. And, you know, for me, I'm just, you know, I remember, like, you know, before scenes, he'd just be sitting there and be like, I'm fucking Spider-Man. I'm like, well, actually, no, not now, dude. Not now. Now we're in like 12th century Ireland. But I'm like, if I said that, I would be so worried that I like fucking jinxed myself.
Of course,
you know what I mean? But he was just so, and I think it really comes down to the guy. He just comes from this wonderful family, super close with his brothers, with his parents. His parents are great. He's just got a great head on his shoulders, and he's equal parts talented as just a really good, genuine, kind person. And I think he's going to be able to do anything he wants in this world and remain like a solid person at the same time. And I love him. I really love him. And the guy blew me away.
I want to ask you about, because you said your background was sports, and you mentioned boxing, you mentioned all these different sports. I did not come from a sports background. My dad was a professional bowler, if that counts. But
are you good? Can you bowl?
I can bowl. I can bowl very well. But that's it. By the way, John has a pup here, and it's the fucking cutest.
Hey, get down right now.
It is the cutest.
Stay.
The cutest pit pup. That dog is all kinds of adorable.
Yeah, he's a little asshole. He's learning.
But you said you come from a sports background. Was it all of those things?
I mean, not bowling. I can't bowl to save my life. I mean, yeah, you know, like I grew up, you know, I come from sort of a big basketball family. My little brother and my dad played college basketball. My little brother played college basketball at a real high level. He was an All-American quarterback in football. You know, I played football and baseball, played college sports, you know, boxed. It just, you know, look, man, I come from that world. All my best friends in the world are still the guys that I sort of grew up playing sports with. And one of my best friends, Sean Kerrigan, he's a pro fighter, a guy that I boxed with forever. You know, I come from that world. I wasn't good enough to, you know, I took it probably as far as I could have taken it. But, you know, really for me, when acting came in and the way it was sort of introduced to me, I was playing college sports, but really once that happened, I was done. You know, I found something, you know, to play at this. I'm sure you know from your old man, it's like to play at an elite level, man. It takes, you got to fucking love it, and you've got to work your ass off. And you know, for me, once acting came, everything else just went sort of right out the window. That's what I wanted to do, and I knew it kind of immediately. And I'm super grateful to the person who kind of showed me that it was for me.
Yeah, but the great thing is that you have all this training, and you may not have been a world-class fighter on the professional circuit, but you know how to do it. So then when you have to do it and you have to do the stunts and you understand the physicality behind it and you understand how to hold your back. I mean, I grew up a super nerdy kid, and it wasn't until my 30s that I said, I think I'm going to start exploring fitness because I don't want to hit 50 or 60
Sure.
and then try to figure out how to turn this fucking rusty old ship around.
Sure.
And what was so interesting about exploring the things that you learn boxing or in the gym or whatever are these weird kind of life lessons that you take into the world and principles that you take into the world. And I never would have, no one could ever explain that to me. I just had to experience it.
I think you're right, man. I mean, look, I think you could make arguments both ways because I know plenty of guys, myself included, that high school football is one of the most dangerous. You have 120-pound kids on the field with it's like some guy who hasn't hit puberty versus some 250-pound monster who's like in the gym. And I think everybody I know who played real competitive high school football has injuries. Where I still to this day, the big injuries in my life are from high school football. That being said, I think the second part of what you were saying is absolutely true. There's no question that for me, athletics it's a mindset, and I think especially in the theater where I started, I really looked at acting and theater acting, especially as an athletic endeavor, and the way that you practice and discipline and honestly, the way you deal with competition and make it work for you rather than against you. I think, before still to this day, I mean, people, Tom Holland will tell you, before big scenes, I'm slapping people, I'm shaking people. I'm like, let's go, and I think that to me, I think that that's part of it, something on the line, something cost. And, I'm really grateful for it. And I think, with boxing, especially, you're really, it's just you up there and you got to go forward and you're terrified, and I think that, I often think that fear is just such an unbelievable motivator. And for me, when I'm looking at projects and when I want to do something, I mean, Frank Castle is sort of a perfect example. That part sort of scared the shit out of me. Not just because so many people care about it and it's, his relationship to the military and to law enforcement and just the comic book audience and how much they, it's like, if you're going to do that, you better fucking do it right. Those guys, comic book audience does not play. And I think, for me, being a father and being a husband and knowing that love and knowing what that's like, I knew that, the only way to sort of understand what it would be like to lose all that is to know what it means to love it and to love people way more than yourself and to happily be willing to give your life for those people. And that sort of seed of imagination, like trying to imagine what that would be like, was something that really scared me. I knew it would take me to, super dark places, and that scared me. But if I feel that fear, I know that that's something I got to do.
Yeah, well, so this might be sort of a hippy dippy question, but you just touched upon it, and I'm always interested to hear how people approach it. Obviously it's all pretend, but if you're accessing these emotions, like you say, going to dark places, how real is that fear that you mentioned of, what if I hit upon something that I don't really want to feel or face, or what if I relate to this too much? Is that kind of a scary thing as well?
I don't know. I mean, I guess it's, but like, I think that your goal should be to sort of like run as hard as you can towards the fear, to run as hard as you can. I mean, I think that's true, with any artist, like run towards the shit that makes you feel and fear and pain and joy. I think these are all things that, what we're trying, I don't know. I'm now the one getting fucking hippy dippy, but I think that's what we're trying to, I mean, fuck it, kumbaya, motherfucker.
Yeah. I mean? Come on.
I think that, like, I think what we're trying to do with art is to try to explore sort of nooks and crannies of the human condition that you can't put a name to. And if there's this sort of fear that you've never really experienced before, this idea, this thought, this kernel of an idea that scares the living shit out of you, and you change your behavior in your real life to try to get to that point, so then you can access that in the 5 seconds between action and cut. I say run towards that as hard as you can. I mean, we operate under this umbrella of safety anyway. You know what I mean? I'm not really fighting bad guys in Hell's Kitchen. When
wait, what?
Right?
No, I thought it was. But I saw you hit that guy. You think that's not real?
So, I mean, I think that if you can go down that, for me, if I can go down that path a little bit and run towards that through my imagination or through the certain situations I get myself in off camera, I think that, I think that's just part of doing your job.
Right. But it's so interesting to hear the approach of, the discipline and because even you showed up at 9:02 and you're like, I'm sorry, I'm late. Like, there's like 2 minutes. This doesn't even count in Los Angeles.
Me, I can hear my father, you motherfucker.
No.
You stupid motherfucker. Where was your margins for error? Where were your margins for error? You know what I mean? That's just...
Your dad was a lawyer?
Yeah. A sort of like a self-hating lawyer. You know what I mean? He's blue-collar guy, grew up in Syracuse, kind of went that way and sort of worked up the chain, and then sort of, in a way, he became sort of this big lawyer, and then he left, and now he runs he's the chairman of the board of the Humane Society of the United States. So he just works with animals, full time.
That's
He's definitely the kind of guy who likes animals more than people, like 100%. Yeah.
Did you feel? I mean, when he was saying like, "What the fuck? What do you mean?" Is he razzing you, or is he being literal? Was he that strict? Was he super strict?
It's not even strict. It's just that there's certain things, and I mean, look, I think my work ethic and discipline and being sort of like a man of your word, I get all that from my dad. He took that super seriously, and he just, I mean, it's fucked up that we're talking about on the day I was late, but like,
you are really late, though.
Brother. But like, I think that was just that was a really, really important thing to him. It's like you are, like you only get one reputation, you only get one word. Like be there for your friends, stand up in the face of injustice, and be fucking on time, man. Like be on time. Like it's weakness to not be on time, and that's and in this business especially, I think it's just like it's fucking inexcusable. You know what I mean? I think that it's like never let the things that you can control, set you back. Like that's in your control. Like only you are in control.
God,
of that.
that's
So
such a great point, because so many people, when they go, "Oh man, I just keep getting fucked over by life," and maybe that's true in some cases, but I think if someone really take a deep dive and go, "Now, did you show up to work on time, or were you 12 minutes late?"
Yeah, man. Yeah, man. It's like, it's so fucking hard anyway. I mean, it's like things are hard, like raising kids, like the work, like it doesn't matter this business, any business. Like life is tough, but like take care of the shit that's 100% in your control, and like it's probably gonna be a lot better. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because I think people don't realize. Well, even in this entertainment business, you will probably work forever if you just showed up on time. Now, being talented and being nice to people, like those things are very good too. But the longer you work, the more people go, that guy's kind of a pain in the ass. Even if on a conscious level they don't know exactly why. If you aren't a person of your word and follow with the agreements that you make with people, it does stick in the back of their heads. And when you show up on time and you're cool to people and you're prepared and you do it like that. Being talented is a nice bonus, but that alone, I think, will ensure that you'll continue to work forever.
I mean, I think so. I mean, I just think it's just being respectful to. Anyway, I apologize, man. And
you don't need. No,
I know, but it's like anyway,
it would never even. I mean, what's really fascinating about it is that I feel like I've already learned something from you, which is, listen, so I'm like. 4, 6, 7, 8 minutes late, whatever. It's sort of I feel like it's kind of the Los Angeles loose schedule that we have. But even just seeing how adamant you are about being on time,
making my skin crawl.
It actually makes me go, shit, I think I've not been paying attention to that, and I really need to be more aware of this.
But look, at the same time, and I mean, I don't want to belabor it, but at the same time, like, I think you also have to not judge. Like, you have to not, like, the other thing I don't do is, like, I look at that motherfucker, he's late, which I find a lot of sort of, like, discipline. Because, look, man, if you were to look at my life overall, and if you were to look... If like my buddies and my brothers were in here, they'd be like, John's fucking disciplined. Like John's a fucking mess. Like that guy. But I think in these certain areas, you just, for me, and again, this is just what makes me work. It's like, I need it to be soda. Like I need it to be run tight. Like no fucking around. But if somebody, I actually admire the person who can show up, sort of like roll in, like been out all night, been fucking partying, eating shitty food, show up and just be, oh yeah, we're doing this. All right, let's fucking do it. I'm like, wow, man, if I could only. But
that person can't do that forever, though.
Look, man, maybe not. I just know that does not work for me.
Yeah,
like, that
no,
would
that
not.
doesn't work for me either.
It does not work for me.
Since, boy, it's so funny that Walking Dead's going into season 8. So when I think back to when you were on the show, it's like, it feels like it wasn't that long ago, but it was legitimately like 7 years ago.
Yeah, man.
And since that time, you got married and have proliferated the Bernthal line. You have like 3 kids
they
now.
Just keep popping out, man. Yeah.
It's like every
Which
other
is crazy because I haven't been home. I've been making movies. Like I literally think my wife gets pregnant on phone sex, dude. I mean, I'm like literally not there. You know what I mean? Literally not there. But yes, we the 3 kids. My first son, I got married 5 days after season 1 wrapped, and then my wife gave birth while we were shooting season 2. And
Holy shit.
Yeah, and I remember I got a call. You know, it was such a, one of the real, other sort of like just great kind of, priceless sort of takeaways from Walking Dead is, I kind of came up with Sarah Wayne Callies and Andrew Lincoln, who have great marriages, great children, great relationships. And so I had this unbelievable model for me. And it was sort of right of the years where I just kind of stopped with the world of like fucking up and drinking and getting arrested and just being sort of like an overall asshole, which for some people, they sort of hit rock bottom once and they change. I just kept hitting that motherfucker over and over and over again. I just couldn't learn. And I finally sort of did right before Walking Dead. It was kind of the gift of all gifts in a million different ways. But then to have these models of marriage and parenthood and how to do that in this industry, there's no words that I can explain how all of them, Norman, Melissa, Scott, Jeff, but Sarah and Andy, they just really, and they're different, but they just do it right, and they lead with love and family first. And I got a call. We were in our trailer, and it was during season 2, so we shot everything out that fucking farmhouse. And it was sort of this like 3-mile sort of hike into the woods to
Everyone
get there.
was excited to get out that farmhouse.
Yeah, dude. And our thing was I would always get there early and walk the 3 miles. Sarah and I would sort of walk together. Through the woods to get there. And I remember we were sort of getting ready, and I got a phone call from my wife, and she said, my water broke. What does that mean? And I'm like, I'm like, Andy, her water broke. What does that mean? And, you know what I mean? He's like, I don't know. Ask Sarah. I'm like, Sarah, her water broke. What does that mean? And fucking, and Sarah's like, you got to go. And I was like, what we got to shoot? What do I do? And I remember Andy just said, listen, man, get in your car, go to the fucking airport. I got you. Like, we will shoot scenes with just me. Get out of here. Like, don't wait, just go. Because from Sonoya, Georgia to Venice Beach, California, without a ticket, that's a mission,
man. That is a
mission,
trek.
man.
Yeah, that is planes, trains, and automobiles.
Yeah, man. I blasted out of there. I called my brother. He got me a ticket on a plane, and I remember it was the last seat. It was the last seat. It was the middle seat in the very. I mean, dude, I would have gone under the plane if
sure.
But it was the middle seat. And I get back there, and as I'm pushing up, I remember I'm walking down the aisle, and I remember thinking, man, now I got sort of 5 hours to sort of sit here and collect myself, get out of the fucking zombie apocalypse, and start really, dude, you're going to be a dad, man. This is happening. Like, I have this time now for myself. And when do you get that time?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, what a great gift. And as I was going, I see this guy, and he's like looking down at his DVD player, and he's looking up at me, and I'm sitting as this big, giant man, and he's like, Shane, is that you? And I'm like, shit, man, here we go. And I mean, that motherfucker from Atlanta all the way, I had to fly into John Wayne Airport, you know what I mean? The entire way. He's like, so he had season 1, and we were just doing behind the scenes. So that scene there, was that filmed in Atlanta? I'm like, yeah, dude, the whole thing was filmed in Atlanta. He's like, but that scene right there, was that Atlanta? I'm
still
like, yeah,
Atlanta.
dude, still Atlanta.
It's all Atlanta. That didn't change.
That's how I spent my time. But
did you make the birth? Did you make it in time?
I did.
Good.
I did. I made the birth, and then my son kind of grew up. He spent sort of the first sort of half year of his life in Georgia on that set, and it was a super special time.
Oh, that's really incredible. Because do you think you went into fatherhood just because my wife and I are probably, we've been married a year, probably about a year away from as she referred to it, pulling the goalie. In other words, pulling the birth control.
I get it.
It takes some unintended shots on goal to make a sports reference, my only sports reference.
Fair enough.
And so I'm sort of wondering going into it, like, how conscious are you of, all right, I want to try to take these things that I learned from my parents, but then not those things that I feel like I could do differently or better or just wanted to. I mean, how conscious was that? And then how much when you're actually doing it, is it like that just all goes out the window?
I mean, I think it's all the above, man. I mean, look, it's the biggest job, not to intimidate. It's the biggest job you're ever going to have. It's the most important job we have, in my opinion. And I think, unfortunately and fortunately, it's one of those things that, like, you're just not going to do it perfectly. You're going to do the best that you can, and you're gonna put everything into it. But these are human beings, and you're going to fuck up. And I think sometimes the more I plan and the more I plan, watch me father this puppy. Like, hey, man, get down. Hey, all the way. Good boy. Sorry about that.
Nicely done.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, just got to keep him nice and high on marijuana. Good sativa, and you just like he'll be fine. I think that sometimes like the more you plan and the more you sort of make rules for yourself, the less you actually are opening your heart and opening your eyes to the individual child and seeing what they're going through. And look, my mom raised 3 boys. She's a foster mom. They've had, dozens and dozens of foster kids through their house. And I've seen kids come in, with, unbelievably rough situations and just showing them love and being open to them, how much they changed and grown. And they all sort of come back to her and they want her to be a part of their lives. And I think my mom is, this would embarrass her, but I think she's sort of like this perfect mom, and I think the thing that she would say more than any other is, listen, open your heart and open your eyes to the actual kid. And I think, yeah, look, man, I struggle with it all the time. I want my 2 oldest are boys. I want them to learn what I've learned, but I do not want them to learn it the way that I've learned it. You know what I mean? And yeah, I think it's just one of those things that you got to keep on adapting, and there's no right way to do it. And you got to make peace with the fact that you're going to fuck up. And my only advice would be, is really acknowledge it when you do. Like, daddy fucked up, and like divorce yourself from this idea of being the perfect parent, and admit your mistakes and admit your shortcomings and admit, hey, this guy could probably teach you this better than I could, and being okay with that. But shit, man, it's everything. You're never gonna just crush it. I mean, there are days where you're like, dude, I fathered the fuck out of them kids today. But there's also days where you're like, damn, dude, like this, they got the better of me, and like I didn't handle that well. I got frustrated, and again, I think it's about just being super super honest. I think, but I think just the fact that you're thinking about it, and you have a great woman. I think like you guys, I think your heart's in the right place, and that's like half the battle.
It is. I think, being a much older dad, because I'm older than you are by a few years, and I think that I don't think I would have been a good dad young.
Sure.
Because I was also a fuck up.
Sure.
When you like before you kind of straightened everything out, what do you think you were rebelling against? Were you hate yourself, or were you just hate the world, or you just didn't really think about it?
I don't know. It's really, really a good question, man. I think that from a young age, there's no question I dug attention. There's no question that I wanted to sort of shine. Both my brothers are like enormously successful. I'm the middle child. My little brother is like fucking perfect, dude. You know what I mean? Like, went to Princeton, like played sports, perfect. Now he's a world-renowned cancer surgeon. You know what I mean? Yeah, he's like he's like built hospitals in India and Africa, and he's like, you know what I mean? Literally goes down the street, motherfuckers like drop roses in front of his feet, like coming to America. You know what I mean? But like he's. And then my older brother is just this, enormously successful businessman, and he's like super good looking and all this shit, and like they're just, I don't know. For me, I always had a real nose for, and as you can see, it's like completely smashed in. I just had a fucking nose for trouble. I really remember at a young age that like that was how I was sort of gonna define myself. And,
sure.
And I think in the end it helped, because I grew up in DC, and DC in the 80s and 90s was in a very, very, rough place. And there was all kind of walks of life there. And I, by no means, had sort of like a rough upbringing, but I made it rough. I always sought after. I always wanted to be in the most dangerous places with the most dangerous people. And I think that's how that's the road that I went down. And from the youngest of it, trouble and trouble and trouble. Serious trouble, man. Like my mom, like at times, like literally hiding me from the police. You know what I mean?
Oh
and
my
like,
God, that's incredible.
Yeah, and it was just like, and I just didn't learn my lessons, and I was given every break, and I only sort of have myself to blame for it, but. And look, a lot of the friendships and the people that I care about most in this world are all the guys that sort of went through that path with me, who strangely are all doing really, really well. And like, if you went back to DC and you talked to people who knew us when we were young, there was like, dude, these guys were like, it was just not going to work out for this. And especially me, like it was not going to work out for me. But, I think at the same time, I found, this one acting teacher, this woman, Alma Becker, she really, she saw something in me that just totally changed the course of my life, and I found something that I was able to sort of tap into, all this energy and all this boisterousness and insanity and digging into these parts of myself that when I dug into them before would only land me in trouble, and all of a sudden I was getting approval from it, and I was getting respect from it, and it was working for me, and I'm enormously indebted to her. And she was the woman that, when I sort of got in trouble and I couldn't finish school, she was the one that told me to move to Moscow and study acting there. And that's what I did. She married my wife and I. It was sort of the best. She was really like a guardian angel.
How do you just move to Moscow and study acting?
Man, it was there was a program there. It's part of the Moscow Art Theater. It's like Stanislavski's theater and Chekhov's theater. And I remember, I wasn't able to finish school. I'd been in lots of trouble. All kinds of pretty serious shit. And I went to her and I just said, hey, look, I want to do this acting. I want to be an actor, but to me, I didn't know any actors. I was so far from that world. And I said, to me, I didn't think it would be any different than being a plumber or being a lawyer. What are the steps?
Right.
And she said, doesn't really work that way. But she said, if I were you, if I were a young actor in America today, I would go audition and try to get into the Moscow Art Theater School and go study over there. And I think part of her knew she needed to get me away from sort of the people that I was hanging out with in America.
Smart.
But she really believed in this system of, hyper discipline and a place where there was a real reverence for the arts and where, in Russia, an actor, it's a very masculine profession. It's not, it's not sort of this like touchy-feely, like, hey, we can do no wrong there. It's like, if you get into that school, like, they're going to break you the fuck down, and you'll do acrobatics, and you'll do ballet, and if you're not good, you're out, it's not, and they'll, like, tell you, you're not good, and they think, your teachers are not people who are sort of trying to kind of like make excuses for their own failings or validate their own sort of shortcomings. The teachers in Russia are like the best of the best of the best of actors, get the honor to teach. And and I think just being in Moscow, living there in the late 90s and early 2000s, it was the Wild West, man. And I think this kid who thought he was this tough, street smart kid from DC got a rude fucking awakening of like what real, of just what real life, just expand the fuck out of my mind. And I'm super grateful for it. And there's no way I would be able to be working as an actor if I hadn't gone. It was the best thing I ever did.
In Russia, theater performs you. That's what I heard. I mean, it's a great, I've always wanted to go, but I never, but I just didn't. Where do I just go to Moscow and then what? And then where do you go?
I mean, I can definitely hook you up with that, man. If you
speak Russian?
Interested. So I didn't when I went, but then after being there, I also played baseball while I was there. Played pro baseball in Russian. Nobody spoke. I had a translator in my classes for acting. But yeah, you pick it up, and I got pretty good, man. After a year there, like I got pretty good. It's not really a place where people are super, like, even if they know it, they're not really super down to speak English. You know what I mean?
Hey, everyone, I'm from America.
Yeah. Can you help me? That's like,
cool dashboard cam.
Right? I mean, so, but yeah, the theater in Russia is just, it's a totally different deal. It's bigger than movies. It's bigger than TV. The theaters are packed. The theater is not just for sort of rich white people with white hair. It's for everyone, and everyone's dying to get there. And the best of the best actors are all in the theater, and they're packed every night. There's no fire code, so people are sitting in the aisles, and it's a real, during, I don't want to give you a history lesson, but during communist times, there was no public gatherings, right? And so to do theater, the Moscow Art Theater was sort of a state-sanctioned theater, and they could put on plays. There's no church, there's no meetings. You couldn't get groups of people together. So to do theater there, it was this huge honor, and it had to be state-sanctioned. And then once the state sort of realized that some of the things that people were sort of trying to get across in the shows were anti-government or anti-communist, actors and directors and playwrights were being assassinated. Meyerhold was shot in his apartment. Actors were sent to Siberia, and my teachers, my three teachers were doing an underground play called Cinzano that's still running, and they would go in the subway stations, in the tunnels, and people would go in and sneak to go watch this play that
Holy
they put on.
shit.
And if they had gotten caught, they would have been executed or sent to Siberia, and they did it anyway. And everyone took that risk because it was so important to them. And, my teachers, when they went to, two of them fought in Afghanistan, and one of them, as an acting exercise to get out of fighting in Afghanistan, pretended like he was insane and lived in an insane asylum for 4 years. And like, those are the guys that taught me. And so it just was vital, man. It was like there was so much at fucking stake, and to get it right. And that's really with me, like that's really with me. Like, I'm not going out there and just sort of like, hey, this is let's make this paycheck today, or let's do that. I really want it. I crave those kinds of stakes in the work. And the cool thing is what I found out here is that there are people that are like-minded, that take it this seriously, and those are the people I want to be fucking with. You know what I mean?
What did you take away? What did you take away from Russian culture that you thought was really beautiful? That maybe most Americans, when they think of Russia and whatever the Russian stereotype is that's in their head, what did you take away from it that was beautiful?
It's I mean, a bunch of things. I mean, I think more than anything else, it's just this complete lack of pretension. It is not odd. And granted, I have not been there. This was 10 years ago, right? Even more now. I'm old as fuck. But like, there's no pretension, right? So if you're going to have a conversation with someone, it is not odd that you would strike a conversation with a stranger, and at the end of that conversation, one or both of you are in tears. You ask somebody how they're doing. They are going to tell you how they are doing and what is going on in their life. The arts, my best friend over there was this guy named Dima. I lived in this really shitty part of town called Park Kotori, Gorky Park. And when I'd walk home every night from the theater, there was always this group of young guys, and they'd be out there drinking sort of like a 2-liter bottle of vodka, passing it back. And there's this band, the Bloodhound Gang, and they thought I looked like one of the guys in Blood. So every time I'd walk by, they knew I was American. They'd be like, Bloodhound Gang, and like, give me the finger. And I was like, yeah, fuck you guys. Every night it was the same shit. Then one night I saw my friend Dima, and he was getting jumped by these 3 skinheads. And I don't know why, but there was 3 of them and 1 of him. So I got into it with him, and I helped him out. And then Dima and I became like super tight friends. And he was just basically this guy who like kind of lived on the street, but he knew every single member of the Moscow Art Theater. He knew what was playing at the Bolshoi. He knew who the artistic director was of the Mali Theater. There's just this appreciation and this fascination with the arts and being a Russian artist, how much that meant. And I hadn't seen anything like that since America. He's an American ball player. That's and I really, that really struck me. On every street corner there's a statue of a playwright or a poet or a painter or an actor. You go on the subways, people are reading Bulgakov and Tolstoy. I was really taken with that. I was really taken with sort of all this stuff that I kind of looked at growing up as being like kind of weak or lame because I was a fucking idiot. I saw there, and it was strength, man, strength, and to be honest and to tell people how you're feeling and be open and to know yourself and to work hard and to have pride in your work. It really reshaped the way that I looked at the arts. And look, there was some really brutal shit I saw, like some really, really brutal shit and some really crazy shit that went down where, at first I was like, wow, this place is fucked up. But I think it all kind of melds into the sort of the same thing of this just, culturally, it was just enormously honest. And it changed who I am. And I owe being there. I owe so much to being there and to Alma, this woman who sent me.
Now, not to get, I don't want you to incriminate yourself or anything, but young Jon Bernthal, middle kid trying to find his identity. Very tough for middle kids to find what their identity is.
Woe is me.
But one good crime story, one good Jon Bernthal committing a crime story that's not too dangerous, like not going to get you in trouble, but just one kind of like, look, I shouldn't have done all that stuff, but one time I got away with this. I
mean, man, it's so bad. There's so many. But I mean, look, I'll be totally honest. I mean, I think the the big thing that sort of like plagued me through the beginning part of my life was just sort of issues with fighting and with violence and sort of trying to find myself in that world. And you know, when I was young, it was always sort of like I wanted to kind of roll with the baddest and toughest kids. And you know, we got involved in some street fighting just sort of became a thing with us. And you know, I feel like, and it really carried through with me a lot longer than it should have. And it wasn't, I think, this sort of like this thing in me that I needed to express. You know, I didn't come from this like rough and tumble home where I needed to get it out. And so I think a big part of it, I just wanted to kind of be involved. Until later in life, I think I sort of wanted to know what it was like not to be the guy standing behind the guy with the guy. I wanted to know what it would be like to be the guy who's in the front, you know, and that landed me into some very, very serious trouble. And it was sort of this thing of exploration. And I think that, you know, at a time, and I know you want a specific story.
You don't have to
I'll give you
a
but I think that like with my friends, my group of friends, you know, I know this sounds, but I think, you know, we all came up together. We all knew each other our whole lives. And I think that it was sort of our way. I mean, we love each other, man. And it was sort of our way, and this might sound fucked up, but of, you know, getting each other's back and being that we were always outnumbered. There was always kids looking for us because we sort of went to this school that was, it's a long story, but I always looked at it. It was sort of our way of kind of like telling each other we loved each other by like getting into these situations and showing each other that we had each other's backs and you know, not starting it, but definitely being willing to finish it. You know, like those were the things. Now, as far as like, you know, just, I remember as a young age, a shitty crime story. I don't know. But so I used to steal shit when I was little, you know, all the time. And I remember one time we were in, Kent Mill Records in Washington, D.C. And, you know, we would go and we'd steal CDs. You know, we'd all wear these like big puffy starter coats because we were assholes and you know what I mean. And I remember we were all in there and I just would do, and it was just so shitty that we did it. And I remember I stole the CD and I was going for the door. One of the Kent Mill employees ran behind the counter and I guess he had pressed some button and they installed this thing that locked you into the store so you couldn't get out. So he ran over to me and he said, you know, and he ran over to me with a Polaroid camera.
Of course, sure.
And, you know, and so then now I'm like covering my face as he's chasing me. I was a kid. I was like 11, you know, he's like chasing me around the store trying to take a picture of me. And my friends, here are my, you know, rough and tumble friends. They're just laughing their asses off, you know. And I finally had to give him a picture. And then there was like a big picture of me on the window. It said like student from hell, like never allow him in.
That's so funny.
Yeah,
so you're 11, you're stealing a CD. This probably makes it like 1987. What are you stealing? DeBarge?
Oh man, I feel like it was probably Beastie Boy, like Licensed to, you know, like it was probably.
Oh yeah,
like,
that was right around when Fight for Your Right to Party came out.
Yeah, like Paul Revere and yeah, all that stuff. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, man.
I mean, you stole a good CD.
Fucking A,
you know,
man. Fucking A.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't steal it. I had to give it
You
back.
didn't get away with
I'll
that.
trade you the CD for the picture.
That
dude,
one
you know?
time you didn't get away with it.
Exactly.
But it's so interesting that to hear you say like, oh, I didn't want to be the guy behind the guy, I wanted to be the guy. And then all these years later, in a way, you're manifesting that with the characters you play, specifically Frank Castle. Mm-hmm. He's not the guy behind the guy. Mm-hmm. He is the guy. Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of that even when you have this life where you feel like, oh, I don't know if I'm going in the right direction, but you still were kind of training in a way for this thing that would ultimately be such a significant part of your life years later.
Yeah, I mean, I think it all goes into it. Excuse me. And again, like, you know, this I think that, you know, again, it goes back to, you know, fatherhood, and it goes back to, you know, you take all these experiences and look now. You know, man, I have in my real life, I really have found peace. Like I'm super happy.
I'm glad to hear that.
Thanks, man. Like I love my wife. I love being a dad. I love where our life. I love where we live. You know, I'm just enormously. I'm just happy and content, and that was something I never really had. Again, I think with Frank, you know, it's really, you know, luckily. You know, I have this sort of well of shit that I went through that, again, was self-imposed that I can draw upon. And I've been in these sort of situations and seen some stuff that, you know, again, I really would not want my kids to see or go through, but I've gone through it and I can draw upon it. But I think, you know, the biggest thing for me with Frank, again, is is going down this road of what it would be like to lose this shit, lose what you care about most, and really do that honestly, and really try to carry that with you. And, when I go and I play the part, I separate from my family, and it's something, again, I wish I didn't have to do. I wish that the circumstances were different, but you'll see, man. 3-4 months in a row away from your kids. You know what I mean? It's crazy what that will do, especially if every day you're running towards the darkness. You're running towards you're not at nightclubs or eating Chinese food or going to see movies. You're like walking by yourself, trying to sort of stay in it. And again, this is only because I don't believe in myself enough that I could do it the other way. But it's the same thing that I did with Shane. It's really what I do for all these parts. And so, again, I don't think that kid who's like down to fight anybody or, living crazy and getting fucked up all the time. There's no way. I was acting back then, but there's no way that guy could do what I'm doing now. Like, I think, to me, I want all of that to be channeled into the art. I want all of that to be channeled at work. And Andy Lincoln really put it to me best, man. I remember he told me, he said, man, I don't need anything. He's like, I don't need to party. He said, this is my disco. We were on set. He said, this is my fucking disco, man. I do it all here. And he said, everything else is just being with my family and finding peace and resting and enjoying. But like all the shit, I put it all into here. And it was such an enormous gift to me to sort of hear that and see that firsthand, as a number one, as an actor, as a father, as a husband, right before I was embarking on the journey of my life, which was really to be a father and a husband.
Was there anything this, as we're sort of winding this down, was there anything this season, Punisher? Because obviously, Frank Castle there's still a lot of other story going on in Daredevil.
Sure.
And Frank Castle is essentially a murder tornado. So was there anything in the sea of doing a standalone show with him where you're like, oh, this might be too much, or I think that might be too far, or should we dial this back a little bit?
Man, I think the opposite. I mean, for me, it was sort of if there was sort of a dialogue between me and the powers that be, in that show, was sort of the opposite. I have no interest. I only want to honor the fans, the comic, military. I only want to honor the people that care about Frank. And to me, the one thing, I do Comic-Cons. I'm out there. I feel like I feel like I have an understanding of what they want. And if it's anything, it's like, do not go for likable. Like, do not go for, trying to make him accessible. I think it's all about being bold enough to say, to dare the audience, to be eager for the audience to turn their back on him. Say, he went too far this time. And then to empathize with him enough to let that come from a true place of pain and not let it just be pure, not just make him a sociopath, to let it be coming from a place, hey, bam, stop that. Speaking of sociopath, he's 4 months old. He's already thinks he's a watchdog. Chill, dude, chill.
I think he's just a little concerned about the Punisher. And I think he's going a little too far this time.
Yeah, you're right.
Castle's gone a little too far.
No, sorry.
That's okay. But my last question for you is, unless there was more that you were wrapping up there.
No, I think that's it. I think that is the line of communication. I will never think that it's going too far. I push for quite the opposite, and I think that's what makes him different. That's what makes him Frank, and that's why people dig. And I do believe that there is a little bit of this guy in all of us. I do believe that, and I think this just happened to be they fucked with the wrong guy.
There's a good life lesson in there somewhere, even though it's a little twisted because of the way Frank expresses a lot of this stuff. But if you are not the most authentic you that you can be, then you are watered down and you're diluted, and that doesn't even have to be a character, but just as a person, it's like figure out who you are and just be the shit out of that person, whether or not people are gonna, instead of worrying about, is everyone gonna like me, or it's like, just be who you are, just be who you are.
Right.
But I my last question is about Sweet Virginia.
Oh, cool.
Which is coming out in November, right?
Yeah, man.
But I don't know that much about it. I know it's like a thriller. So what? I
think you're gonna like it, man.
Okay.
I'm really, really proud of that film. It was like, it was one of these kind of perfect situations with this great script, this unbelievable director, Jamie Dagg. And I don't know if you know Chris Abbott. Do you know? Do you know
I
him?
don't know Chris.
So Chris was on Girls, and he sort of started out kind of as one sort of actor, and he is. I think that his performance in this movie, I'll throw it up there with anything, literally anything. People were comparing it to Javier Bardem in No Country, but it's he plays, I don't want to give too much away, but it's about this small town in Alaska, and this hitman comes to town, and the whole sort of purpose of the movie is sometimes violence is needed to sort of burst people out of the dormant lives that they're living, and real good can come out of it. And it's all these people have sort of gone to this little town in Alaska basically to hide, and then this guy comes to town and just fucks shit up. But the end result is, everybody sort of becomes who they're supposed to become after that. And what this guy does is he plays this part with no bravado, no bluster. He does it with just, he's scary as fuck by just being really, really tormented and weird and honest. And I can't say enough good about the performance. And for me, I got a chance. I normally play that part, and I got to sort of do something in a way that I've never been able to do before, and a completely other kind of part. And it was originally, they wanted it to be, the part was written for a guy in his 60s, and I don't know how somehow they landed on me, but I'm super grateful that they did, and I'm super grateful that they let me sort of find what I thought they were looking for in a 60-year-old man and attribute it to me. So the character has Parkinson's. He has there's a bunch of sort of stuff to kind of take away from the sort of Punisher-esque quality that people have sort of associated me with. But I'm really proud of the movie, and I think you'll really dig it.
Man, I am so glad we were able to make this work.
Me too, man.
I fucking love you, Jon Bernthal.
Thanks, man. Love you
and
back,
I
bro.
love your
all you
dog,
guys.
and I love that Katie was the dog whisperer.
Yeah, you did great, dude. You handled that situation.
Well, Katie volunteers with rescue pets.
Oh, nice.
And loves animal, loves pits.
Nice.
And so this was like when she saw that you brought the dog, like this made her fucking day that she got to
didn't
hang
even
out
say
with your
hello
dog.
to me. She was
no,
like, who the fuck
went
is this
right for the
asshole?
dog.
Yeah,
You said I have to go to the bathroom. She goes, I'll hold your
I got
dog.
the dog. Yeah,
right there.
Right on.
But excited for Punisher,
Thanks,
and
man.
anytime you want to come back on, you are welcome. And this was fucking great. I hope you had fun.
I appreciate it. Best to you and your wife, man.
Thank you, sir. Best
Right
to
on,
you
brother.
and your 3 kids and
Yeah,
your
dude.
wife.
Thank you, bro.
All right, enjoy your burrito, everyone.
Rock and roll.
Now leaving Nerdist.com. Enjoy your burrito.